Welcome to Shift, a college admissions ACT, SAT, and CLT podcast for a changing world. I'm Tyler, the founder of Achievable, and we have affordable ACT and CLT courses that include everything you need to ace your exam. A full textbook, tons of review questions backed by our memory enhancing algorithm, videos on key topics, a built in study planner, and full length practice exams. You can get a free trial by going to achievable.me, and if you like it, use the code podcast to get 10% off. Now, let's get started. Today, we've got Durga Suresh-Menon with us from New England Innovation Academy, and I'd love if you could introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tyler. My name is Durga Suresh-Menon, and I am the new head of school. I apparently get to say that I'm new for about 8 months. So I would say I'm the new head of school at the New England Innovation Academy, and we are in Marlborough, Massachusetts, about 35 miles outside of
Mhm.
Boston. And we are a 6 through 12 day and boarding school. Our boarding program starts at seventh grade. The sixth graders don't get, they're too small, too young. They don't live on campus, but we have a boarding program that goes 7 through 12. And we are what you would call a school that focuses on the future and being relevant in the present.
Mhm.
And so, we have innovation in our name. And what we teach is innovation and entrepreneurship. That is our focus. But we also prepare students to go to college.
Right. That's great. When I heard about you and kind of like your school, what I thought of was how essentially high school is going to probably need to evolve here in the next, I don't know, hopefully soon, but like in the next 10 years for sure, especially with, the rise of AI. And one of the things that I think about, this is, just a small side tangent, so bear with me, is when my cousins who are, firmly in Gen Z were growing up, everybody told them like, go get a computer science degree. That's how you can, secure a really lucrative career and all these things. And so everyone went and did that. And now there's less computer science job openings today for entry level than there were before the pandemic. And it's just like, AI just like completely changed that entire field in less than 5 years. And so if you had started college in like 2022 and you're getting out, next year, you're like, well, crap, like that was the thing to do 4 years ago. So it's definitely a really interesting problem. And I'm excited that you guys are tackling it even as early as seventh grade. And so, yeah, I think to start things out, I mean, basically, not just you, but just general advice, even for parents. Like, how should parents start to think about reframing, even as early as middle school, but certainly like the high school education for their child?
I think traditional thinking, exactly how you said, when you talked about computer science a few years ago, up to 10 years ago, when I was growing up in the 90s and was getting ready to go to college, it was being an engineer. I have an engineering degree, by the way. I think the relevance of
Yeah.
the degrees don't go away. I was the dean of computing and data science before I became head of school. I think computer science is not going away. I love the way you said it. AI is changing the way that we are looking at degrees now. We are looking at jobs right now and less jobs right now. But the
Hmm.
jobs that are open, Tyler, are extremely skilled jobs, right? And so I think one of the
Hmm.
things that we need to start thinking about, and I'll talk just about middle and high school, even though I think we should start talking about it as early as possible, is that we should not be necessarily thinking about education in one very narrow way. That's how education has already been, right? You go to school,
Right.
then you go to college, then you get a job, then you buy a house, right? Then you get married, you have children. Like it was like check marks, like people had to do check. I think that doesn't work anymore. The gig economy happened. Right through COVID, if you ask me, one of the things, the big things that happened when we started talking, you and me, you talked about the guy work from home, right? That was not as prevalent as it is now. And now there are people who only look for work from home jobs. They don't want to go anywhere to work in an office, right? So everything is changing.
Hmm.
And with that, education needs to change from the beginning. We cannot be talking
Right.
about only one pathway. We need to talk about that. I want to say that, the many ebbs and flows of life, we need to prepare our students for anything that they choose. As in NEIA, we have started saying it in New England Innovation Academy, we say, instead of saying what is next, we have said whatever is next.
Interesting. Okay. So just like kind of reframing it, because at the end of the day, like, you could argue that change is going to get faster, not slower, and you kind of can't prepare necessarily for a specific job as much as maybe you're just kind of preparing a set of skills.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Like, we always talked about soft skills, soft skills. I'm telling you, being able to present a logical thought is going to become the most important skill in the next 10 years. So you keep saying, oh, AI does this, AI, but you still need people to explain it to people, right? The sales and the marketing side of things, right? The creation of things and that connect between, I always talk about this interface. There's always the research, back end, technical things. Then there is the people who use it, the customer, right? And then there is this big interface in between that happens. That's not going to change, right? So
Mhm.
so there's more options now. Before it was like you were either a consumer or you were a creator, and there was nothing else. But there's so many other things that you can
Mhm.
do right now. And I like the way you said it. We need skills, not subject matter expertise.
Right. Yeah, well, and I think it's not only that, it's that it's the only way to kind of be future flexible,
Hmm.
right? So then let's talk a little bit about how to get there. I definitely agree with you that that's kind of the way that things should go. But, if you were advising a student at your school or like, parents of a student at your school, like how would you set them to kind of like planning for and tackling this challenge?
It's a great question. I've been thinking about it as I prepared to talk to you today of examples, right? So I'll give you an example, and this happened
Mhm.
very recently, so it stayed in my mind. So we always say at my school that we're all about innovation and entrepreneurship. So we had an open house recently, and one of the parents said, "So you're going to teach my kid how to make a business?" Like he was like, "Oh, so my kid is going to be a millionaire when he comes out of high school?" So we were like, but that's not necessarily what we teach. We teach the
Mhm.
entrepreneurial mindset, right? What is the entrepreneurial
Mhm.
mindset? You tried something, you failed. Now what? Right? So you fail forward.
Right.
You have now said, okay, I tried this doesn't work. So what would I learn from this? What would I change? How would I reiterate? Right, so we
Mhm.
started thinking about this not just in schools like us, right? So also this is a very good time to tell you, when I talk about New England Innovation Academy, this school is 4 years old. We are getting into our
Mhm.
fifth year in September, so we are a post-COVID school, right? So what is the relevance of such a
Right.
school, right? What is the relevance of such education is we are teaching people how to fail forward, how to create that growth mindset, and to be iterative in your solutions. And I think that's what you
Mhm.
talked about. You said flexibility. I'll add a second side of the coin, adaptability, Tyler, because that's so important, right? You have to be
Right.
flexible and you have to adapt to change.
Yeah, well, and it's hard because I talk to a lot of other people in like the college admissions world, and the advice in the 90s when I was a kid was like be a generalist, like be a well-rounded applicant. And now it's like the opposite. It's like you should have known since when you were in sixth grade that you wanted to do robotics engineering, and you needed to have started your robotics engineering club in ninth grade, and then and you went to a robotics competition in 11th grade, and also have like a side project where you built a robot, right? Like that's the advice nowadays, which is I think better in some ways because frankly I think like it tells the universities a lot more about like what you're going to do with your
Mhm.
career, right? And it also kind of is more directed in terms of like you're hopefully working on something that you're interested in as opposed to like taking drama class because you want to be well rounded and you don't really care. But on the other hand, that feels more brittle and less flexible to me, right? Like, what if suddenly we don't need robotics anymore? That's a bad example, but you get the idea. So I'm curious, like, how you kind of deal with that conflict of like, you want people to start to think about what their specialization and what their career will be, and then start building towards that, but also you want to remain flexible.
That's again, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to what do you want to do next. So, Tyler, what you described to
Mhm.
me sounds like a very well thought through, flushed out student or a family, right? I always say this, I'm an independent school head of school, right? Our main customers are actually our parents who are hiring us, right, to take care of their child. And you are talking about a very thought through, like I like the way you said it, do this in sixth grade, do this in seventh grade, do this in 10th grade, get this side project going. But I think that is not every student. I think right
Mhm.
now the students are, because the undecided major in college is not going away anytime soon. Right now, engineering schools are creating undecided engineering within engineering, right? Computing is creating undecided computing within computing. And then there's this overall undecided major or a general major. So I don't think it's that dire yet. But yes, you're right. What you talked about is a very parent plan, parental plan for the student. So the way I think schools need to
Mhm.
deal with this, because the students sometimes want, they're like, I really don't know what I want to do, right? So because most of the times guidance counselors would ask, what do you want to study? That's one question. The second way to ask that question is, where do you want to study? Right? Maybe we should not be waiting until 11th grade and 12th grade to ask these questions. Maybe these questions need to start at 7th grade. So I'll give you an example, right? I'll also always preface by saying this. I am a head of independent school. I promise you, there are hundreds of thousands of schools across the country that are doing a remarkable job, and they'll tell you stories about them. I'm just giving you a very small peek into one school in Massachusetts. And in our school, we talk about passion and purpose. All right. We help our students by asking these iterative questions. What is your purpose of creating something? And what is your passion? And the way we started is we start talking about a student's passion, right? Then we say, okay, if this is your passion, what is the purpose? What do you want to do? Then we say, how does it
Mhm.
impact others? Now, this is another very important part of education that we should be paying a lot of attention to. And we call it human centered design,
Mhm.
which is you don't create something putting a person in the middle of it. Like, why are we creating it? Asking those right questions, right? So I think we need to start asking those questions way back in the pipeline. Don't wait until the 11th and 12th grade to be like, which college are you going to? Because there are some students who truly believe that exactly what you said, Tyler, that if I don't go to college, there's no other options for me, right?
Mhm.
And there are
Right.
hundreds of other options for people if you don't go to college. It's not just that. Somebody talked about a gap year. You could go into a PG program. You could go directly into work. You could go and just upskill in a very small, narrow field, which is very relevant and needed right now. And Tyler, we definitely need to discuss the lack of workforce in certain parts of the entire workforce, right? So if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they'll tell you what jobs. I love the way you said
Right.
in computer science, there are too many graduates, not enough jobs. But there are too many jobs in construction and manufacturing and not enough people to take them. And we just passed
Right.
a $2.3 trillion infrastructure bill, the big infrastructure bill that happened a couple of years ago, because our roads are failing, our bridges are failing. So we need to re-up this. But where is the talent coming from? So there was an
Mhm.
article recently that was written about how middle schools and high schools need to start thinking about educating the students for jobs that are needed in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Right? So that's another
Right.
way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also important that basically, like, there's more to life than being in tech finance or some other computer desk job. I think that's definitely, I mean, we had someone on here a few weeks ago that, like, she is part of like a trade school, and business is good for them because people are suddenly like, oh well, I can kind of, like, they focus on like beauty, so like hairdressers, nail salon technicians, things like that. And it's like, oh, I can, like, set my own schedule, like kind of run my own business a little bit. Like a lot of Gen Z and younger people really like that idea. But like you said, the key is to figure out what you're kind of passionate about first. And then the thing is that the passion will not change, even if how that passion's being translated into a job maybe changes. I mean, how do you, I guess a pushback I have gotten, because I've made similar sort of advice to people, including like my own aunt, and sort of the feedback I get sometimes is like they don't know or even think about this stuff, right? And I'm sure that that's something that you run into with your students, especially in the younger years. How do you kind of kick that conversation off for them? And then what do you do if their passion is, I really want to be famous on TikTok, right? Which is like, okay, I don't know if that necessarily of the most likely outcome or highest quality career that you could focus on, right? Like, how do you kind of guide that conversation?
This thing about TikTok and Instagram might seem new to a lot of people, Tyler. I remember 20 years ago, a colleague of mine in college said, "Oh, by the time they are in 10th grade, all they want to do is be on American Idol." So 20 years ago, it was all about American Idol. So I think the TikTok, the Instagram, the Snapchat, the American Idols, there's always going to be that. And that is what young minds think that they want to do. Oh, let us not forget, I have a
Right.
10-year-old. Being a YouTuber is a thing, right? Because there is this man who makes apparently hundreds of millions of dollars on YouTube by just like talking to people on YouTube or challenging people on YouTube, right? So, yes, that is definitely
Hmm.
there. I think it is our responsibility as educators to really think about how to get that passion out of a student, right? So, let us take your example. I
Hmm.
love that you talked about TikTok because it's somebody will always say, I want to be a social media influencer, right? So, I think the best question to ask, and I think our educators are doing this in spades, is you ask the next question. So, what do you want to do on TikTok? Right? Oh, I want to show them that I can build something on TikTok. And suddenly the conversation shifts, right? What are you building? What is this all about? Who
Hmm.
are you making this for? Who will use your product? Right? This does three things, right?
Right.
There's this innovation here, where you're asking the student to innovate and think of something that doesn't exist, right? Again, I'll make the big distinction between invention and innovation. It doesn't have to be something that doesn't exist. It could be making something better. That's an innovation. That's one.
Hmm.
Two, you tell them, okay, so who are you making it for? Why is this being made? Why is this your passion, right? It's the I keep talking about the ladder of questions that help, and you look at the ladder this way, right? It's going up in an upwards triangle, helping our students find what is that passion that they're looking for. And I think it is
Hmm.
possible, Tyler. I'm seeing it happen in New England Innovation Academy, right? I'm seeing, and I think this has to be very intentional. I think that is the most important thing
Hmm.
because I asked that of my head of teaching and learning, and I said, why? Well, like, how do you get there? And he said, because we are intentional about it. We have created space in our coursework in 7th grade where in Innovation Studio, that's what we talk about, right? You get an empty sheet of
Right.
paper. What can you make with this paper? Oh, I can write on it. I can make it into an airplane. I could make it into a weapon, right? Or
Right.
I could cut it into pieces and make it into something. It could morph into something else. There you go. And that is the beginning of
Yeah.
that questions.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I can see how you kind of get the conversation started with the student where they're starting to think about this. But then my question is like, okay, so the challenge then becomes, so you start out, let's say 7th grade, everybody's kind of in the same bucket, which is like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And you give them a bunch of what do you want to do activities. But then once they decided they want to do all these different things, and one person wants to be a hairdresser, and one person wants to be an influencer, and one person wants to be an astronaut, and they're all still at the same high school, how do you provide curriculum for all those different people? Or is it not that you're providing the school, right? Because also, again, I can't like for people that don't go to your school, also like how do you facilitate that? I guess it's like the second part of that
Oh,
question.
that's a great question. And again, this will come back into the difference between going to a public school versus going to an independent school like ours, right? And I feel that there's
Mhm.
curricular flexibility when you come to it. As heads of schools of independent schools, we are constantly asked to make a case for why. Why should somebody come to an independent school and spend tens of thousands of dollars versus going to a public school for free? And this is where that curricular flexibility piece comes in, right? And you're so right.
Mhm.
Like everybody has passions. So I'll give you an example. Again, I can't talk for all independent schools, but I'll give you an example of one independent school because I lead it. In New England Innovation Academy, you're completely right. We do have that talent. We have the astronaut, we have the influencer, and we have the person who wants to
Yeah.
be an artist, right? everybody needs the base skills. So I call them, we call that bringing everybody to ground level. What is that ground level? You need your basic math skills, you need your basic science skills, you need your basic writing skills, you need your reading skills, right? This is like the basics that you need. So our education is still built on that curricular stability. Where we go from there is where we all diverge into different kinds of schools. For us, academic excellence is not just math and science, but finding your passion, being innovative about that passion, being entrepreneurial about that passion, keeping in mind that human centered design is what helps generations to survive. We actually call it as that is being future focused. If you're not thinking about what you're making, who you're making it for, you're not being future focused, right? But as an independent
Mhm.
school, we have that curricular flexibility, right? I always say that that is the big difference. Like it's a different structure of budgets, it's a different structure of curriculum, it's a different structure. But again, we all are teaching that the base case. We're all teaching what is required in every single individual, like the basic math skills, science skills, reading skills, writing skills, social
Mhm.
sciences. We're teaching all of those things. Where do you go from there, right? So, and I think that
Mhm.
is the flexibility that we are able to do in a school like ours, where we are like, we have this course called Innovation Studio that's a requirement for every single year, right? And in Innovation Studio, our focus is getting this passion out of our students, helping them understand what does innovation actually mean, what is entrepreneurship, because it's not like, because every time I say innovation entrepreneurship, they'll be like, oh, so you're teaching my kid to run a business. Now don't get me wrong, do we have six very successful businesses that run out of our school? Yes, we do. Between 8th to 12th graders, I have six businesses that run, right? And they even know how to do succession planning. They know how to buy a business. They know how to sell a business. Yeah, we do have those kids as well. But we are teaching the entrepreneurial mindset, which can lead to an entrepreneurship opportunity, but it's not an entrepreneurship school. It's teaching entrepreneurship.
Yeah, well, and I think it kind of, you just mentioned a bunch of things that made me think about how really kind of just school in general needs to change. And I think it's not just high schools, but also colleges. I mean, yes, there's like Babson, which is an entrepreneurial focused college, and but like I went to Carnegie Mellon. There was one entrepreneurship class that I took, and it was in a lot of ways the most useful class that I took, and taught me all these things that were like outside of the box of like typical academia. And it sounds like you're talking about sort of your schools doing the same thing at the high school level. But it kind of gets back to this idea, and it's kind of this old millennial joke at this point, where it's just like, I learned how to, do calculus, but what I really needed to learn was how to build a budget, right? And sort of just like what we were all taught as we grew up in America in sort of the 90s and 2000s. And I think that that shift needs to continue. Things like budgeting, like you said, presenting an idea properly, right? Public speaking, even, right? Or relationship building, or buying and selling businesses, right? Even if it's your lemonade stand or whatever it is. And so I think that, yeah, just in general, I would like to see more emphasis on sort of life skills. And maybe that's where the generalism comes in,
We call it
right?
life
I don't
at
know.
New England Innovation Academy. We actually have a course called Life Design that flows through sixth grade
Mhm.
all the way to 12th grade. And these are all the things that we talk about. I need to check to see if we teach them how to balance a checkbook, because nobody uses a checkbook anymore. But yeah, budgeting skills are as important as it is as our presentation skills.
Yeah.
We are also very big on self advocacy, Tyler, because I feel that I'll tell you this from a different angle, right? So I come from 25 years in higher education to secondary education. And if you ask me, everybody coming prepared to college when they come to prepare, I'll say no, but I'm not just necessarily talking only about the math and science skills, right? It is the communication, it is the self advocacy piece of it, right? It is being able to come and learn to solve problems that are not necessarily only in the classroom. And I
Mhm.
love that you said that even in Carnegie Mellon, you took one entrepreneurship course because we are trying to teach that in college. And I'm so happy that you
Right.
used Babson as an example, because we have a relationship with Babson. We actually have courses in the summer that we teach with Babson faculty on our campus that gives them college credit. We send our faculty to be trained in entrepreneurial teaching, entrepreneurship teaching through Babson, right? And so we have
Hmm.
realized that we can't have the students wait until college for some of these skills, because there are colleges and universities all over there who have got the maker spaces and they want the students to come and be entrepreneurial. It's too late. 10% still use
Right.
it, but 90% are not ready for it because you didn't catch them at the right time.
Right. It's also just like it's not that you can't learn entrepreneurship later. I mean, certainly I think there are lots of people that do like, don't even start a company till they're like 45 or something like that. It's more that entrepreneurship's relevance and importance is moving up and up and up to being relevant as early as when you're in your teens if you're trying to start certain things. And so I think it's more just like the changing nature of work,
Mm. I think
like to
you're
me,
right.
I
Changing.
think.
I love it. I love that you said the changing nature of work, right? What
Hmm.
what is needed right now? Like if you go get an education, how are you going to use it when you get out of high school, when you get out of college, right? And I think there has got to be a lot more discussion about what are we doing with our students, both in high school and in college. And I love that you said that this
Yeah.
cannot be all about the onus on it being on high school. There's a lot of it that higher education is doing right now as well, right? Because I think higher
Hmm.
education, in a way, is also on the precipice of, are we doing the right things? Are we being relevant? I think everybody's asking that question at every single stage, right? Am I being relevant? Are we being relevant?
Right. Well, and yeah, it's really an interesting inflection point, right? I think it's also, why kind of you're like the school that you are a part of and others like it are in such an interesting place, right? And I think maybe to kind of, at least for me, kind of my last line of questions or comments is around the idea of independent schools, right? I mean, I feel like I very much value public education. I certainly don't want it to go away. I think that it provides, like you said, it provides that like ground floor for so many people, especially those who don't come from like means. And also, I do think that we need to innovate our education system before, the rest of the world passes us by, basically.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. And I think there's a lot of public school and independent school partnerships that are happening, Tyler. I'm going to be meeting with,
Hmm.
we are what you call as Metro West area, where our school is. I'm actually talking to the superintendents of the public schools to see about what kind of synergies do we have, right? Because there is a
Hmm.
funding difference, right? So how can we support each other? This is not always, we're not in the business of just making money, because a lot of people think about independent schools that way. We are in the business of education, right? And there's a lot of
Hmm.
partnerships that happen. We are constantly thinking about what is that synergy that we need to create so that we can work together, so that we can help all our students move forward. I'll give you another example.
Hmm.
We decided in 2024-25 that we needed to make a decision about AI. If my director of innovation was here, he would tell you you could do one of two things. You could either
Hmm.
run away and hide, or you ride the wave because a big wave of AI is coming. And at New England
Right.
Innovation Academy, we have decided to ride the wave, right? Because we have a
Yeah.
fearless
I mean, I
leader.
don't think there's really a choice.
But in education, they do think that, Tyler. There is this argument about, oh, AI is going to take over the world. No, it is not going to take over the world. It's a tool. It's a great tool. It's a wonderful tool if you know how to use it, right? So I think there are still, and some people think it's just going to go away. That's what I'm saying. That's why
Right.
you have to really think about, the wave is coming. What is your choice? And we decided we are going to ride the wave, right? And so we
Right.
did this day called a day of AI. So we really intentionally created programming about what is AI? How is AI used? What is AI's relevance in a school that is 6 through 12? Why are we talking about it? We brought speakers from outside. We talked about ethics in AI. We brought this company that talks about ethical AI to come and talk to us. It was an amazing day. But we invited all the schools around us to come and join us, right? It was not about like,
Mhm.
oh, we are going to do it and nobody else is going. No, no, it was like, what else can we do? Maybe there are projects that we can all work together. Because I think if you're riding the wave, you want more people to join it, right? Because it is the right thing to do. And I think that partnership is going to grow more because universities are doing that too. And now we are trying to build these relationships between high school and universities as well, right? So all
Mhm.
different kinds. So we within the public and independent, we are trying to partner. We are trying to partner with colleges and universities. Colleges and universities themselves are partnering. So all kinds of things are happening. But what is the beauty of all this is we are asking the questions right now, right? We are asking the questions
Yeah.
as like exactly what you said. How can we be relevant? How can we be flexible? How can we create students who can adapt to the change that's coming our way?
Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I guess, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you wanted to make sure we talked about before we wrap up?
No, I think you're asking all the relevant questions. And I love that you're talking to leaders like myself, Tyler, because I think this conversation cannot stop. And you are, I call the external influence who are giving these objective questions to us that we need to answer and we need to think through. So thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely.
This has been Shift, a college admissions podcast for a changing world, hosted by Tyler from Achievable. And you can get a free trial of Achievable's ACT and CLT courses by going to achievable.me.